All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Let us continue to the second unit of measurement or second second scale, popular in the social sciences. Now we try to unpack the concept of ordinal scale. Uh, as before, we are going to try to illustrate this important concept of unit of measurement with some examples. Let us go to the first example. We can conceptualize small extent, some extent, large extent, um, uh, symbolized by code number 1, code number 2, and code number 3 here, as a Likert type scale. We know that a true Likert scale start with 1 strongly disagree, 2 disagree, 3 neutral, 4 agree, and 5 strongly agree. Looking at this, hybrid Likert type scale, we can see that 5 options are reduced to 3 options for the respondent to choose one option, and the meaning, the response category are also changed from strongly disagree to strongly agree to small extent, some extent, large extent. However, there's proximity or similarity between truly Likert scale and Likert type scale like this one, simply because the gap between small extent and some extent is not really the same as the gap between some extent and large extent. If you go back to truly Likert type scale, the gap between strongly disagree to disagree, or from 1 to 2, does not necessarily equal to the gap between 3 to 4 or 4 to 5. 4 representing agree and 5 representing strongly agree. So this is a very important message for us who want to be very clear about what is ordinal, what is interval, and what is ratio, and what is nominal scale. The first concept to really understand is to recognize the reality that for ordinal scale, the gap between the first number to the second number from 1 to 2 does not really equal to the gap between 2 and 3. However, implied in this scale is that small extent is less than some extent, and some extent is less than large extent. In other words, the implied concept of ordinal scale is that there is an order from small to large, or very small to very large, from not important at all to very important, from less to more, from small to big. That is a fundamental concept, underlying ordinal scale. In this example, we want to ask the respondent to select one response category that reflects their true opinion. And the question that we ask is, to what extent do you trust your memory? And the participant can select a small extent, some extent to a large extent. So again, there is an implied concept of order, starting from small to large extent of trusting one memory. Still, we are on Likert type scale. For example, this is a question that we ask the respondent: to what extent do the following people represent a barrier to your selection of a spouse, of a life partner? And we provide, you know, 4 response categories, starting from not a barrier, small barrier, big barrier, and very big barrier. So we also provide codes, 1 representing not a barrier, 2 small barrier, 3 big barrier, 4 very big barrier. Possibly we can provide a clearer instruction by indicating to the respondent that they can just call a number that reflect the true opinion for each of the item here. Yeah, the items include mother, father, sister, brother, grandma, and grandpa. So as you can see, uh, this is not Likert scale. This is Likert type scale. It is somehow a hybrid. It is somehow blended. So Likert scale is very powerful, and there are so many possibilities of creating or developing Likert type scale items like this one. So again, I just want to re-highlight a few concepts relevant to this kind of Likert type scale, which basically is ordinal. So the gap between 1 and 2, okay, not a barrier, to small barrier, does not necessarily equal to the gap between 2 and 3, small barrier and big barrier. And the gap between 1 and 2 does not equal to the gap between 3 and 4, big barrier, very big barrier. So this is one concept, an important concept. The second concept is that there is an implied meaning of order, meaning that code number 1 represent little, no barrier, and code number 4 representing the biggest barrier. So if you go back to the first scale, nominal scale, we cannot compare like this. We cannot make draw a parallel like this. There is no implication whatsoever as to the concept of less than or more than. For a nominal scale, there is no implied meaning at all regarding the concept of less to a lot, or small to big, or a little to a lot. Oppositely, ordinal scale really implies the concept of less to more, small to big, not at all to very much. Okay, we're gonna go to truly Likert scale. Let us move to Likert scale, and we have one statement for the respondent as an example here. My university should adopt blended learning. We want the respondent to indicate their true opinion regarding the adoption of blended learning at their school. So we have 5 response categories from strongly disagree to strongly agree. They are going to circle one answer or one number reflecting their true opinion. This is a truly Likert scale developed by Rinsis Likert many years ago, and his discovery or development of Likert scale really has a huge impact on research, on the development of research instruments. So once again, we conceptualize, we treat a Likert scale as truly ordinal, simply because, again, the gap between strongly disagree to disagree does not equal to the gap between neutral to agree, or the gap between agree to strongly agree. So there is no way, to saying or to assume the equal gaps between pair of option here. Let me move to more example of ordinal scale. In our research, we might touch on socioeconomic profile of the participant, and income could be a good candidate for understanding the socioeconomic profile of the participant. And we provide 3 response categories like this: low income, middle income, and high income. So this is also a good example of ordinal scale, because implied in this statement or variable or question is the concept of order, right? The income start from low to middle and to high. If we go back to unpacking the codes that we apply to each response category, we're gonna see something interesting here. Code 1 means differently from code 2, and code 2 also means differently from code 3. Code 1 implies the concept of low income. Code 2 implies the concept of more income than code 1, and code 3 represents the highest income in this response category. So if you go back to nominal scale, there is no such a thing as parallel comparison among response categories. We go to the last example. Actually, this is the old example from Gaelic. Please indicate your cumulative GPA, and then Gaelic provided 5 options: less than 1.5, 1.6 to 2, 2.1 to 2.5, 2.6 to 3, and over 3 CGPA. So we assign code 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to each of the response category. So similar to the previous example, these codes mean something, right? The lower code represent lower GPA, the highest code represent the best GPA, and code number 2, number 3 represent average, below average GPA obtained by the respondent. I hope this lesson gonna contribute to a better understanding of this unit of measurement in research, the ordinal scale.